let's talk about Mac Jones. We brought him up earlier. It was so interesting. The messaging on him has been so funny. He's not available, but the Niners are surprised that teams aren't more interested. And if he were available, which he's not, the Niners would like a day 2 pick, or actually it was reported that they would want a round 1 pick. It doesn't sound like anyone's even offered a day 2 pick. Why do you think that is?
I mean, it's so obvious what's going on here. It's like the Niners, the initial reporting is totally accurate, which was the Niners want a significant price tag for Mac Jones, period. That's the story. The rest of this is just posturing. The Niners want a top 50 pick. So now the report is they want a first-round pick.
Right.
Because if they want a top 50 pick, how do you make sure that you get a top 50 pick? You ask for a first-round pick. And, so they're playing that game. And they know, because they know they've got the trump card, because they know what's out there. And they know what they have and how he stacks up to what the alternatives are. So they know they've got the leverage and they can just be patient. And they also know they got a quarterback that they like, who gets along in their locker room with their starter and with their players, amazingly, who's also dirt cheap. So they're fine. They're good either way, but we all know that they're not in a position where they can keep Mac as a luxury. They're not able to keep luxuries when you don't have, foundation pieces. So they have to move them. They will move them, but this is their way of getting a top 50 pick.
I don't think they're going to get a top 50 pick for him, and that's why I don't think they're going to move him. And I think that what we're finding out is that the trade market isn't there. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think what's happening is any team that were to trade for him, so you theoretically have to give up a top 50 pick. Then you'd have to give him an extension because you're making him your starter, and he's not going to start for you for $4 million or he'll hate you. So that's that's a big investment. You're not taking a flyer on Mac Jones. You're trading a pick to the Niners, you're giving up a pick, and then you're giving an extension. Whereas if you were to go get Geno, you wouldn't have to give up a pick, or Kyler, or Kirk Cousins. And
see how bad those names are?
Draft Ty Simpson. It just seems like Mac's a little expensive for other teams, and he's probably worth more to the Niners than anywhere else. And it's hard to say that another team could take Mac Jones and say, we're very confident that he'd be as good for us as he was for the 49ers. I mean, maybe Minnesota could say that, maybe not.
I mean, these are all fair points. I mean, one of the notes I saw was connected to a Barrows report saying that some executive was like, is Kyle coming with him? Kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Like Kyle is the key to Jones, but I don't know. Was Kyle the key to Darnold? I don't see
but
that
team
much
didn't have to trade for Darnold.
No, I understand, but right. I mean, but Darnold went and got a job in Minnesota, and now a couple years later,
he was great.
But I mean, I personally think Darnold was a decent prospect. I think Jones is a better prospect. I really do. And whether I know everybody's got a different opinion. That's all fine, and I understand. Darnold just won the Super Bowl, and Jones, in everybody's mind, is still just a backup quarterback who had a good year, a lucky year in Shanahan's system. But as you know, and I know, the system isn't all that, as far as it's not like it just makes, water into wine. And it wasn't like Mac Jones was throwing to Rice and Taylor and Jones and Waters. He had nothing. I mean, the games that he won, he beat the Rams on a day where they couldn't run the ball at all. They had the most inefficient rushing attack day of the year. So, I mean, Mac Jones, I mean, two things can be equally true. I mean, I guess you can argue that he's not this or not that, but I don't know, man. I would have no problem if they kept him, because there are things that he does better than Purdy. And I think Purdy's pretty good, as you know. So, that means I think Jones is pretty good.
To me, the team that should trade for Jones, maybe I'm wrong, but I think this team would have a better chance to win the Super Bowl. I think this team would win the Super Bowl in 2026 with Mac Jones as a starter. Houston. I don't know if CJ Stroud is ready. He's a little bit greener than Mac Jones, and he's had some terrible playoff performances. Yeah. I think if they improve their offensive line and swapped out CJ Stroud for Mac Jones, they'd win the Super Bowl. But maybe I'm tripping.
They just traded for David Montgomery.
Yep. That team's really good.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like Atlanta for Mac Jones. I think Atlanta's a good spot because you know, what's going on with Penix? I mean, Penix is hurt, but there's also questions about Penix. And then Cousins isn't the answer. And so they're moving on from Cousins. So it's like they don't really have an answer there. And yet they do have, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, they've got Bijan Robinson, decent offensive line. They're kind of not that far away. And I think Atlanta's going to come calling. My guess is Atlanta. And also Raheem was just there. So there's a room full of defensive players that Raheem probably loves, any one of which would probably get the deal done. You want to offer a mid-round pick and Rook Ororo? Yeah, I'll do it. You want to offer a mid-round pick or a 7th-round pick and Xavier Watts or somebody like that? You want to offer just Jalen Walker or something, any player at all that he just brought in there, he'd probably take.
That's a great call. That's a really good call. I mean, that's what the Niners did last year when they brought in Salah, right? They brought the rest of the freaking New York Jets with them. Half of them, the special teams.
And Atlanta's got a bunch of guys. And by the way, you mentioned free agents. David Onyemata, the defensive tackle, he's a very good pass rusher, very underrated. Niners have a young Collins, a young West. Do they want that third guy to be a young guy? Well, there's a lot of intriguing guys, and if they could go with in the first round, or they could go sign David Onyemata, who's a veteran interior rusher, because obviously they want to change those faces. They say goodbye to Kalia.
Marcus G916 donates $2. Thank you. Sheridan Milestone 1737 says, how does one become a GM? Because it literally doesn't seem hard to smartly draft and sign players. I can't stand John Lynch's personnel decisions. Well, one, be a Hall of Fame player, or two, become a scout and then slowly work your way up the ladder for 20 years. So those will be the ways to do it. Probably play. I mean, Larry was in the system. He could tell you.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Lyle Bolyard says, how about Devin Lloyd next to Fred Warner? That would be wild.
Devin Lloyd is a tremendous linebacker. The year he had last year was awesome. Didn't he get a pick 6 against the Niners?
Yes, he did. I believe he did.
I know he had a
SRT on 415 says, Niners need to sign and draft a pass rusher. At the rate guys get hurt, we need all the pass rusher help we can get. Okay, I agree. They will.